here we are.
Here we are.
What day is today? Today's Friday, September 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Today's a special episode because I'm actually in your home.
And yes, you are.
It's today day three. So quite an experience so far. We finally found some time to actually sit and chat and do this because it's our usual spot.
Yes.
So why don't we start with, well, I already kind of know what's going on, but
so
folks there don't.
You want to tell everybody what's going on?
What do I want to say? I came here for a visit because I was already going to Santa Fe, and it made sense to add a leg to the trip. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I, as I told you, I came here. I just wanted to meet you in person in Aura, give you a hug, and so we've done all that, and now it's just kind of learning. I'm staying upstairs, so we're on the second floor. On the third floor, my room is a treasure trove of books and stuff. Like there's, I don't know how many Osho books are there, and Young, and
complete works of Young.
Oh, that you have the complete works?
Oh, more than.
It's very intimidating. So I just ran my hand over it, kind of hoping to absorb it. And I don't know how realistic that is.
Well, I would say I've read all of Jung in my training. I've read all of the astrology books that are up there. All of the psychology that's there and the dog training. I've read most of what's there, actually. Some of the things more deeply than other things. There's quite a few esoteric novels, and they're absolutely wonderful.
Cool. So I didn't think I'd start with this question, but we've been talking about vision training and reading, and you've got, you've had eye issues in the past. Like, do you struggle with reading at this point now, or you're able to go and absorb? And
I was always a slow reader, and I didn't know why, So I took Evelyn Wood Reading Dynamics 3 times. And I did have experiences during that where reading really fast, it was like I was inside the author's head, downloading with him. And I'll never forget that first experience of going so fast that it's like I was writing it myself.
So would you say you were in flow, like it was extreme focus?
It was a soft focus. A hard focus is more concentration, whereas I was absorbed. My vision was always, I was very myopic, and I had visual tracking issues, visual alignment issues. I would use one eye more than the other eye. So when my kids got into vision training, because I didn't want them to be as myopic as I was, and we found a developmental optometrist. The developmental optometry work comes out of Yale University. And Yale did a lot of the studies on psychological and critical development. And there are periods in critical development where if you miss the stage, then you can't proceed beyond it until you go back and replay the learning curve. So I had auditory sequencing issues and visual issues, and never saw depth perception, and I didn't know. So being the kind of achievement-oriented person I am, and I wanted to get A's in my classes, I worked very hard. I studied all the time. And when I was a kid, I spent hours mastering my handwriting, and every paper I did had to be beautiful. So when I had vision training, it really opened doors. And then I went back and took Evelyn Wood again. And I took my kids to Evelyn Wood and Marvin to Evelyn Wood. And I read more on the computer now than in reality. But a few weeks ago, I came upon Napoleon Hill's unpublished manuscript, and the pages weren't even cut. And I couldn't put it down. I really could not put it down.
Wow. So that's the most recent book that you read and kind of enjoyed absorbing as a book. So, like, I think it's safe to say you're a lifelong studier. You're always reading.
Yes.
When I think about myself, I was not. I just had such a bad experience in school that like reading is agonizing to me. I don't even trust what I read. I find I'll read a paragraph and I've already feel like I've forgotten it. So that's.
But you listen to a lot of things. So you're auditory.
For sure.
I don't listen to a lot of things because I don't absorb it auditorily.
Yeah. No, I think I've come to that conclusion. I like going for a walk and listening to an audiobook. You know, I'm getting exercise, I'm getting fresh air, and I'm getting data. That has served me well. It's difficult when people describe images and illustrations on a walk, but outside of that, it works pretty well. Yeah, so I gave an update. How about you? Charles been working on your software?
My software has been released to the people in my classes, and we're still working on it, adding features, and I found a couple of things this morning I'd like him to add. We have a premium report, an introductory premium report for Noble Energy Maps that I believe will be able to be released within a week or two.
And that won't be in the software, that would be through a website?
That will be through Noble Energy Maps.
Okay.
And Charles's software is more of a private software. This is a report software.
Right.
And I'm going to be doing 4 lectures next week in Santa Fe. The first one on Thursday, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock Eastern time, which is the time all of them go. I'll be doing the self-center and the tree of life. And I might add in some of what I want to talk about today, which is the importance of spirituality in the manifestation process and how that goes about as part of the process of initiation. The second talk is going to be on the 4 worlds, the third on my time with Ra, and I'm going to add in the science of human design, the studies I did that showed type, how many splits were there, basically validated the integrity of the sacred body map. It did not validate what Ra claimed the content was in the body map. Much of that, especially the health information he shared, was completely erroneous, statistically not verified. So whereas other things you could say, well, maybe that explanation holds, when it came to the physical stuff, the explanations did not hold. And some of the psychological stuff did not hold. The third is, well, the third is my time with Ra, and the fourth is just going to be questions and answers.
Oh, cool. All right.
I like questions and answers.
Yeah. Well, go. You were talking about it's 30-second Sephora,
yes, in
right?
class this week, I was thinking a lot about how people can make sense of not just the integration of the Tree of Life Kabbalistic body map, but how they could make sense not only of that, but put it in the context of the body map. Because many of the people listening are human design people. And Ra was very clear in saying that the human design system was a synthesis. Because of my background as a Jungian analyst, I studied the Tree of Life and the Tarot cards. Jung believed that as you ascend up the tree of life, you develop more and more through initiations, consciousness to the point that ultimately you're self-actualized. And that's Maslow's concept of self-actualization. There's a hierarchy of needs you go through, starting obviously with the physical. And in class, I decided to talk about that in some extensive detail, which we won't do today. But suffice it to say that when you look at the tree of life, which we have sitting here, and you look at the foundation of the tree, the sacral center, you all know what the sacral center is. The sacral is the sexual center, the gut. It's where we tend to say we have a gut feeling or not. In the tree of life, that activates the process of individuation. Now think about it. When a baby is born, they're living out of their gut. They're eating, they're pooping, and they're crying. And that's about it. And there's no mind that's functional in a conscious way. The mind is not really functional in a conscious way until the baby is 3 months of age. And that's when they reach for an object or show preferences for people, or they have choices. So in that first 3 months of life, which is now considered the missing fourth trimester, the baby is learning to channel those gut instincts through their physical world. And the initiation is to keep it spiritual. The prime mover inside of us as humans is spirit. When we say, I am, who do we refer to? And where do we feel it? Where does it come from?
Yeah, when you said that, I felt that kind of there.
And when I say to people so often, when you know what you know and nobody can tell you you don't know it, where do you know it? I generally feel it radiating from the core of my being. And it's not just the root. It's the root to the heart for me. And that makes sense in my design, not my human design, but my integrated design, where I get many of the central columns. But in the tree of life, if you consider the sacral center in yourself and consider that all of the energy has to move through the root to ground you, to bring you into the physical, mental world. And as you come into the physical and mental world, you make choices. Where do you put your attention? Now, in the tree of life, we're instructed to put our attention always on spirit. That when we have a gut feeling, that gut feeling needs to feel right for us. It's not a gut feeling for approval, for control. It's a gut feeling that we're moving closer to who we are and to our life purpose. And it's a driving force. When I started swimming back in the fall of 1973, I started getting these messages that I needed to scuba dive. And I didn't know how to swim. But the voice told me to find a place and go scuba dive. So moving into winter in Chicago, I found a place to go scuba dive. And I signed up for the lesson and I didn't know how to swim. So that we had to swim 8 laps to be qualified to take the class.
Mhm.
I could do maybe 1.5 to 2. And I said to the teacher, what am I going to do? I really want to scuba dive. So how can I do it? And he said, if at the end of the 8-week course, you can swim 8 laps, I will let you take your certification.
Mm.
So I found a teacher at University of Chicago. The pool was freezing cold, and cold is my worst thing, my first memory. And I took private swim lessons, and I got up to 8. So I did it. And since then, I've been a swimmer. And when I started transcendental meditation, I went from 8 laps to 13 laps in 1 week.
You like visualizing it?
Nope. I went into the pool and I was doing as many laps as I could physically do because I was trying to build up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using the swimming example as an example because I don't love swimming, but I am driven to swim. So any day I have the time, a little voice in me says, go swim. And I go, really? Do I have to? Go swim. And I go swim. And now I'm at the point, we built, in California, we built me a lap pool, 54-foot lap pool. Here, I have a 74-foot lap pool.
Right there. I don't know if it's in the shot. No, but it's basically right behind
right out the back. And it's a saltwater lap pool. And I go in the pool and I swim. And at this point, I can swim endlessly. And I realized recently that I was saying to myself as I was swimming, I don't love to swim. What is the drive? Why am I driven to be in this context? And the answer that came to me was that it's the only time in my day, any day, where I am in an environment that prevents any other frequencies except mine from being with me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no sound other than the sound of my kicking
mm-hmm.
or splashing or whatever. There's no one giving me input except myself. And I just keep going. And it's silent, perfectly silent, mm-hmm. except for thoughts. And usually when I'm swimming, I count laps. So the number is a mantra for that whole lap. Mm-hmm. And my head is empty unless that voice gives me a download, mm-hmm. which usually doesn't happen in the pool. Mm-hmm. It usually happens when I'm doing figure eights.
So, I mean, and never mind the benefits of being outside, fresh air, water's kind of, I find like if I have a shower, I get like an energetic cleanse, yeah. Like get off me. Mm-hmm. But it's clear in a lot of things I've been looking at, like water carries information too. Mm-hmm. So, effectively you could be getting a download, just not ready to.
Well, my moon is in Scorpio, mm-hmm. which is a water sign. Mostly I'm fire. So the water does put me in a stillness mm-hmm. while I'm moving.
Cool. So, and we got talking about the sacral, mm-hmm. and I mean, everyone has a sacral, right? Ultimately, put design aside, there's energy there.
We have to take into account that the tree of life is an extremely ancient body of information that has been coded in symbolic form since the beginning of time. Symbols from the tarot and from the tree of life are found in the most ancient prehistoric civilizations unearthed. And the information was passed down, and Moses brought it into the Jewish thought by coding it. And he did it two ways. He coded the tree of life with and without vowels. In the Hebrew alphabet, there are vowels, mother letters and vowels and stuff. And he coded it so the mental, superficial world meaning would be available. And it would give people just the tip of the iceberg, enough to function. And that's how we've all been living for probably the last 5,000 years. And what I've been led to believe is that we're coming up now to a time of disclosure of the extraterrestrial societies that are among us. And many of those listening are people who feel alone. They feel like they're not from here. This isn't their home. I've said my whole life where I come from, and this isn't my home planet. The frequency in the mental world is not a spiritual frequency. It has the potential, but it needs transformation. And that's the four worlds. And that's the tree of life. Now, the tree of life does show that you move between the sacral center to the root, and then you begin to move up the body. And as you move up the body, there are certain tasks that you need to fulfill before you can move to the next task.
Oh, sorry, I got to interrupt you there. So by tasks, you would step through it in one sitting, or you mean over a lifetime of learning you were trying to incorporate, learn, move through the tree of life?
Some people, I think, come into existence more awake than other people. Let me explain the way development happens. Development goes through very specific developmental markers that probably physiologically release phytochemicals. Phyto. Yeah, very sort of minuscule, like, subtle. But, we start out in the first 3 months of life. We have an hour and a half after birth. That is when the baby's breathing on its own. It's been checked out. It probably has already been put on the breast and comforted. At 2 days, we have attachment. Now, that's not to say that from the moment of birth, there's not a process going on, but it's a developmental marker, meaning you really need to go through that stage and you need to attach to something. So, for example, in the studies that helped psychology recognize the importance of attachment and attachment behavior, the original social science studies were with Harlow's monkeys. And they put monkeys in a situation where they either had like a teddy bear or something to hug, or they put them in a cage by themselves with nothing. The monkeys who were left with nothing to hug did not thrive. They had a fail to thrive syndrome. They lost weight. Some of them died. They got emaciated. They were afraid. All kinds of almost psychotic emotions from the early failure to attach. So the monkeys who had the teddy bear and had comforting, they were very attached to the teddy bear. That's why when babies have an object, it's a security object. Mm-hmm. It's a sense of attachment to something that's theirs. A mother comes and goes, a father comes and goes, siblings come and go. They're not always in your presence. But a security blanket, I mean, my kids had a security blanket for so many years that it ended up shredded. And up in the upstairs, I have the shred of it, you know, all these years. And that's an object they never wanted me to get rid of, but it's their security blanket. Mm-hmm. What helped their attachment, because think about it, you are not with your physical mother 24/7. You can't be. She has to eat, she has to go in the shower, she has to go to the bathroom. So even if she is with you 24/7, she's not with you 24/7. And those moments of disconnect can be hurtful, or if you have enough inner resilience starting at birth, you overcome those and you feel secure, and then you move to the next stage. So the stages unfold. So at 2 days of age is attachment, the beginning of it. At a week after birth, spirit really comes in. So first week of birth, think about who you were the first week of your birth. Or if you've taken care of a baby, think about who that baby was the first week of their birth. Mm-hmm. But also, when I was growing up, and I'm pretty old, I remember when babies were born, nobody was let near them for a week. And we thought at the time the explanation was their immune system isn't good enough and they could catch something. But it's also a more esoteric explanation, which is that the soul doesn't come in fully anchored and seated for a week. And in Judaism, the bris occurs at 7 days, which is when the baby is given their Hebrew name officially and welcomed into the kingdom of heaven and to God. And in other religions, the baby is not given a name for a week. And they have ceremonies. So the week is the spiritual timer. And I see that in the charts very clearly. Many people need a week to make a gut decision because you don't know until you know until you know. Mm-hmm. Now, the Tree of Life tells us that that gut feeling is not operating in a vacuum. That gut feeling wants to manifest who we are in the world. And that's why we incarnated in this lifetime. Whether you believe in reincarnation or not, it is very clear that until about a week of age, you're not really awake enough inside your body to even pay attention to what's going on around you. But at a week, you begin to have a sense of self. Let's put it that way. And that sense of self wants to manifest. McClelland research on the need to achieve was some of the earliest research ever done on what capacity does a newborn have, and is there any drive in a newborn to interface with their environment in a way that shows something purposeful, something that gives them the sense that they have an impact on the world.
And that you can see that within a week.
You see that immediately.
Oh, okay.
Think about it. What's the first thing a baby does?
Cries usually.
Yeah, why?
Cold.
What does it want? What's it crying out for? Comfort.
Yeah, it's probably not hungry yet. So
it wants comfort. It's in a strange environment. What do? The doctor ideally puts it on the mother, and the mother comforts it. Mm-hmm. And it feels the frequency and the vibration of the being who it was just inside of. Mm-hmm. And it continues to reach out for that comfort. That is called, in parlance, need for achievement, the need to prove competence in the world. What happens if a baby cries and doesn't get fed? It cries louder and louder, and then it starts screaming. Now that's instinctive, but it's manifesting through physical form. Mm-hmm. So the tree of life shows us that in order to come into the world, the card in tarot is the world card. In order to come from the core of yourself into the world, you must go through an initiation of the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, and the physical worlds. And you must bring all of them into manifestation. Now, the body graph in human design, as a body graph, and as Rob brought it into the West, he said, the voice told him it was a synthesis of the tree of life, of chakras, of astrology, of the I Ching. It is a synthesis of all of that. The piece I'm adding in is the four-world piece. And when you add in the four-world piece, you add in developmental psychology and the development of a human being in all four worlds. We live in the mental, spiritual, emotional, physical worlds. The fields corresponding to that happen to be the four worlds I studied in my PhD training. The psychological world is really the world of the unconscious at the core of our knowing of ourself. The emotional world is the world through which our spirit manifests. Think about that. Mm-hmm. The spiritual world, I called it the emotional world, I called it the emotional angelic world. Why? Because there is no solar plexus in the emotional angelic world. There are the channels of the self from the root to the self to the throat and then up to the crown. So when we go up the spine in the vertical channel, not distracted by emotions or intuition that we have in the world, by instinct, and I broke the sides, the splenic and the solar plex sides, down into the body instinct mind, which is splenic. It's the kind of instinct you have in an emergency, where your adrenaline goes and you are not thinking. Your sacral center, instinctive, spiritual being that we are, is going to protect you from harm on an unconscious level because it values your existence. And the solar plexus side can either be transformed into spiritual higher octave understanding by using your mental world mind to mediate the physical world, the mental world, and bring it through the emotional spiritual world in a way that makes sense out of the challenge in front of you. Mm-hmm. The emotional reactive world comes purely from the physical. You get triggered on an unconscious level. That's why lie detector tests use the galvanic skin response, because your mental world can lie, but your emotional world cannot. Mm-hmm. The emotional world is tied to spirit. Spirit is tied to truth. Truth and integrity are part of spiritual values. If you meet somebody who says one thing and does another thing, they're not spiritually aligned. You cannot be in spiritual integrity and lie. Mm-hmm. It's an impossibility. And many people tell, quote, white lies, thinking it's going to be protective. Mm-hmm. It is not. Mm-hmm. It is mental world deception. And why do I say that? Because no matter what lie you tell, no matter how small, you're not telling the truth to someone who may in fact know the truth in their gut. Mm-hmm. I was talking to someone this morning in a relationship, and one person in the relationship had withheld information from the other person for the better part of a year. And the person who it was withheld from said, I knew it. I kept saying something's not right. I felt it. I knew it. I should have trusted myself, but it kept being denied. Mm-hmm. So that goes on in so many relationships, that to be spiritually aligned, you must be transparent. And it's a transparency of honesty. That doesn't mean you can't keep things to yourself, but it means that when somebody asks you something or says, I have this feeling, take it seriously. Mm-hmm. Give them the benefit and love and kindness of who they really are. And in looking at thousands of integrated charts, so many people are so open on the spiritual levels of being and the physical level of being, that to deny their knowing is evil. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, I'm going a little bit out on a limb and I'm going to get a lot of flack. But the tree of life that is supposed to be integrated into the human design system tells us that between the sacral center and the root center, we need to be looking for how the knowing of the gut is bringing information through to manifestation in the real world. And how do we process it? What does the chart tell us? It's a blueprint of our most uncontaminated spiritual self. And it's the most uncontaminated because we can see who that person is at 3 months of age.
Mm-hmm. A lot there. What comes to mind? I have a friend, his name's Roy, and probably known him 16 years. He had a phrase that I incorporated into my company's core values, and it was the number one, which was tell the truth. It's easier to remember. And it was so foundational and so basic. I still told lots of little white lies to people because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, but I've actually stopped even doing that. Like, I'm pretty direct these days, and it can be abrasive at first, but it's always worth it.
It's freeing.
Yeah, because there's no more bullshit at all. And you're right. Like, I can sense when someone's lying to me, and I'm starting to trust that. We were talking about the narcissist or borderline sociopath I had in my life this morning, and he's long gone, but like, just there were little hints along the way that if I trusted them, I could have avoided a ton of problems.
What kinds of hints were the hints?
Well, one of them I told you this morning, which was a brand new person in my life. He was introduced to me through someone else that I didn't even like at the time. And I didn't like him because I met him once or twice, and he just seemed really arrogant. And like and it turned out I really learned to like the guy later. So this guy's removed, but at the time, he wasn't the right guy for me in my world. But I got an email from him one day saying, if I owned a computer consulting company, this is the guy I would hire. So, and because I didn't like him, but he was on a higher level than me in tech. Like, he just kind of stood out.
And where were you in your process that you trusted one person?
No, because I just didn't trust myself.
No, but you didn't explore additional applicants.
I wasn't looking at the time. And I generally had a philosophy in the business that we didn't put job ads out. We always had a stated, these are the positions we're always looking for. Because I really wanted people to show initiative. You know, not just throw something up on Monster.
So if you went back and did it differently, given that obviously the timing of starting the bigger part of your business was right. So you were primed to hire someone for that position. So going back to that state of mind that you were in then, what do you know now that you would have made you do it differently then?
I did not have any confidence in my own abilities. I didn't think I was smart, and
no, that's the negatives about yourself.
Okay, well, that's at the time. Yeah.
Okay, no. But I'm asking you to go back to your spiritual self of then, that knew what it knew when it knew it. And if you had gotten a different message from that not so friendly friend about what the timing was for you, what would you have done differently? If, for example, you had said to yourself, God, what is the message I'm supposed to get from this person who I don't really trust? And I think I know what God would have said. Do you?
Everything about it was weird, and I should have paid attention to that.
Okay, but what the part that you needed to pay attention to was that it was time to hire someone. And you missed that. So it's not that you didn't do it right. You see, what you're doing is going to the mental world, and you're self-critical because you didn't listen to the other frequency that on a spiritual level was saying, oh, maybe you should find this person now. But don't just accept a person, find the right person.
Yeah.
So that, knowing now, this moment, what you could have done, listened to differently then on a spiritual level, what difference does it make in your process?
What difference does it make? Well, I have a much more in tune, confident sense of that spirit, or that sense. It was just so quiet. I didn't trust it. Like it was even less than a whisper, but it was, there was just a lot.
I know you didn't trust it then, but it's still going to whisper to you, Sean, in that same whisper, because it's going to test you and it's going to try to deceive you. And that's what evil does. So somebody lied to you who was not a good person. And because you didn't trust that so gentle whisper that you could hardly hear, you didn't listen. But the lesson is to trust the whisper.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And then there were other times along the way where anytime I think about this person, those moments come up and I'm like, that was the moment. That was another one. Like it was just, yeah.
Go back to every single moment you can remember and re-script it, coming from sacral. But it's not sacral itself, because the sacral is going to reconnect after the two other paths. And when it reconnects, it's a complex. Think about the human design chart. You have 3 channels going from the root, from the sacral, 3 up to the splenic center, 3 up to the solar plexus. And then the splenic center connects between the 50-27, which says it has a whole connection to the sacral center on an instinctive side. But on the solar plexus side, you get from the root to the solar plexus and to the throat in emotional reactivity. But you cannot transform unless you go through the higher mind. You go through
Amazon.
Maybe Marvin. You go through higher mind, right? Or you go through the transformation in the sacral center through the 659. It's a portal.
Right.
And that portal is always open. You don't have to have the gate to have the portal.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because I don't have that definition at all in any of the worlds.
No, which means it makes it, I don't know whether having an open center makes it easier or more difficult. Because if you think about it, if you have a definition in a gate or a channel, you're predisposed to respond in that way. But if it's open, all possibilities are there for you to choose from. So I think the tricky part in terms of the developmental evolution of consciousness is that having so many open-ended choices, if you're not spiritually aligned and aware of yourself, makes it sometimes easier to just go along in the mental world with whatever people are doing. Because you're not going against the mainstream. You're not going to have to stand up for your own self. And sometimes you're lazy.
Okay, I have to sit with that one for a bit. You've kind of alluded to it before, but like there's 10, they're called
Sephiroth,
right? In the body. So, and there's not a direct correlation necessarily from those 2 centers. But I think we're referring to this as effectively the root.
Yes, that's the root and the sacral. There are, I believe, there are 10 here. And in the body graph, we have 9. I believe that the throat center is combined because the over here, when you get up to the higher levels, there's more of a unification. And I have a feeling that that's what it is. But there's no one-on-one correspondence in any of this. And it's a mistake to try to make it because the energies are flowing in such a organic way. So over the next few weeks, what I'll be doing in my classes is going over those paths of intelligence in the tree of life, because the nuances of how spirit moves through us in those channels, and more importantly, what is the initiation we're going through. So when you look at judgment, for example, in the body graph, that's encompassing 3 different channels. And the 5818 has the hexagram, what has been work on what has been spoiled. And it's the channel of judgment. So it's frequency. It's knowing the frequency of knowing when you know. And you do that instinctively, not just in your own life, but exactly what you were saying about knowing that your friend's frequency wasn't aligned and not trusting it. Now, you didn't trust it because you didn't trust yourself.
Yeah, no, I was desperate for help and was not in tune at the time. Yeah.
Well, you got help. You got big help by God.
Oh, for sure. I was hitting in the head
and
by a
he
2x4.
tried to not put you through the challenge.
Yeah.
But
there were warning signs for sure.
So I'm pointing that out to you, Sean, because for you listeners, taking the mental world way, the easy way, the way where you get control or approval, they are never the easy way. Along that path, if it's not flowing, when in doubt, sit it out. Do not act. When in doubt, more than likely, go somewhere else. When you know what you know, there is no doubt. It's like my swimming. If I ask myself if I want to swim, more than likely the answer would be no. But I don't ask myself that's in the world. I ask my gut. You want me to swim? Kind of thing. Or, okay, is it right to swim now? And then I do it. I don't think about it.
The question I keep wanting to ask you, the world is 21, right?
Yes.
And so root to sacral, and that's not a path it would take, right? 21 is heart to the G center, as far as like if I were to try to quit the body graph. The reason
there's not only one layout.
Yeah.
When I asked Ra about the tree of life, he said that the major arcana, the only thing the voice told him was that the major arcana are in the ajna, the throat, and the self center. 3 centers. So I thought a lot about it, and I got a layout that works, and it points out the double helix. So I think it's a right layout, but it's not exactly this layout. And I haven't gone back and paired where there's differences and not, but this is the spiritual world. That other layout I got, I think, is the physical world, because it's the double helix between the sacral that has the world and the fool, and the ajna that has the world and the fool. So you start from the spiritual instinct, and it shifts the whole physiology of your brain. And we have that. The ascension is up the spine. So what I basically traced was the ascension in the body graph up the spine in a double helix. But this is a more psychological, integrative look at the process by which we go through stages of initiation in a mental world existence that brings us to full consciousness.
Okay. I want to ask my question differently, though, because I'm still curious about that 21. So 21 is my Chiron.
Okay.
And
you're saying it's your gate. This is a card, not a gate.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of things I'm thinking. So one, I'm just curious about like that connection and how the world 20. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to correlate the 21 to gate 21. I don't know if that's true. But the other thing that
no, gate 21 is more likely coming, well, gate 2145, right? Is so it's coming out of the heart center, which doesn't have a one-on-one correspondence, but there is a path of intelligence that will make sense.
I guess I'm still trying to, and maybe I'm way off base. So let me just get this out. 3 years ago, and you've heard about my shamanic experience. I went up islands, plant medicine stuff. The fellow's name there was Mark, and he was saying similar things to what you were saying, where spirit would give me a hint. So I was talking about my life events, and he was like, yeah, it's like a little scratch at first, then it's like a shot in the arm, and then eventually you get hit over the head by a 2x4.
Exactly.
So when I saw him, I had been hit over by the 2x4 probably about 12 times at that point too. It was just finally like, I surrendered my phone. I was like, I don't get it. Help me. My Chiron return, which I don't know if Chiron return correlates to Chiron, but at least in human design, that's within 2 weeks. Like the date of that was within 2 weeks of being in that person's home. Like it was. So my mind is just like, did I need to wait to age 50 to get it?
No. No. We in the esoteric teachings and in astrology teachings, we're told very clearly that the planets and the aspects do not compel action, that we always have choice, and that we're being tested for discernment. So I remember an incident when I went to the person who I bought crystals from. And I had been working for many, many years with Catherine DeJersey. And Katie, I first met Katie in 1973. I had started studying astrology in 1971. And I thought it was the hardest thing I ever tried to study, because we didn't have computers to do astrology. So I had to learn how to use the tables of houses and the looking up latitudes and longitudes and tables of tables where you convert things in, you're calculating in hours, minutes, and seconds. And so I was statistically sophisticated enough to learn to do calculations, so I could do a chart. But I couldn't make sense out of all of the glyphs and the aspects. And finally, after attending a whole bunch of American Federation of Astrology meetings at the Palmer House in Chicago, I decided I needed to find an astrologer. And have somebody show me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't get in. Katie was the only astrologer in Chicago. I couldn't get in for years. She was so famous.
And this is in the 70s?
In the 70s.
How do you even find an astrologer in the 70s? Was it in the
Yellow pages?
Yeah, okay. So there was one choice
Right.
at the time.
There was one, there was only a psychic bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the psychic bookstore and I bought some books. And then it happened that, and I couldn't get in to see Katie. So, because I didn't know her. When I divorced my husband in 1973, my lawyer had Katie as a client, God's hand. And he said, oh, you want an astrology reading? I'll call her. So within 6 months, I got in to see her.
She was that busy.
She was that busy.
Wow.
She couldn't even do it for a friend. And she lived in the Hancock building on the 53rd floor. And she wore a red wig and had pointed glasses. She looked like a witch. And I walk in and sit on this broken down couch, and she's across a table from me. I think, this is weird. And she starts reading my chart. And we were clearly karmically connected in a past life and Herculaneum. Many of my astrological, psychological, spiritual friends and family were in Herculaneum with me. The Vesuvius eruption in Pompeii. I died in Herculaneum. And interesting, as a kid, I was always fascinated by Vesuvius. And I would buy books on it. But to continue, so Katie did a reading on me, and she completely blew me away. And at the time, I was about to sign a lease on my first real office in Chicago. When I opened my office, I was renting space by the hour every time I used it. And I was finally busy enough that I took a loan and was signing a lease on a office on Michigan Avenue overlooking the lake. And she looked at me and she said, oh dear, you're going to move. And I said, Katie, you're crazy. I unpacked my books finally after 12 years. I'm not moving. She said, dear. And she talked to me just that way. Dear, if you're not going to listen to me, you come to me with that contract and I will pick the date that you sign it so you can get out of it when you move. So I did. I came to California from Chicago for a Jungian conference, August of 1976. Came out of the tunnel to the Coast Highway and I started crying. And I said, this is home. A year later, I left my practice. I had a 6-month waiting list. Left my practice, took my kids, and moved to Pacific Palisades, California. Started my practice all over again. Commuting to Chicago every 6 weeks for a year and a half.
And this is pre-Marvin and pre-India. So you left Pacific Palisades, went to India.
By myself with 2
Marvin
kids.
Came back. Wow.
So I moved, and she saved my skin because I did need that contract to get out of the lease, and it saved my ass. But she and I became extremely close friends. I own the rights to her books and to her videos.
Oh, wow.
And I have some. And she's always around me. She says, you better believe it. And anyhow, the point is that astrology is not going to compel you. I could have decided not to move. I could have decided to not listen to her. But I trusted, it didn't hurt. Why not? So it proved to me that astrology is real. And it's very real.
Yeah. I've heard, I don't know where I heard it, but like billionaires have astrologers on their staff, like in their inner circle, right?
When I did my calendars using the integrated as well as the 8 multidimensional charts, so I was integrating the composites of all the combinations, I could predict the stock market. And I traded the stock market based on my charts.
You said that before. So why did you stop? Like, wouldn't that be playtime?
I stopped doing my calendars.
Yeah.
Because to do the calendars is extremely time consuming, and people weren't reading them. They couldn't understand them. Even though I gave them everything, the Cosmic Guidance book was part of that iteration of looking at charts every day and making statements in the 5 worlds. And so I still do it, but I don't live my life by it. I live my life by the voice that tells my spirit what the timing is.
So is that from experience? Like, much as you can get data, you trust yourself first.
You get data. For example, Katie told me I was going to move. I told her she was crazy. I had no intention of moving. My life was in Chicago. I had just published a book. I was doing TV appearances. I had a 6-month waiting list. I never needed new clients. I had groups I was doing every 6 weeks, and they were filled with 30 to 45 people. And I had everything I needed. And when I hit the coast highway and started crying, the voice said to me, "This is home." And then, okay, so that was one sign. Then I went to the conference, and I walked over to say hello to my training analyst, who happened to be June Singer. And she looked at me and she said, "You need to talk to Edith, because Edith knows someone who's doing with his hands what you see with your eyes." Because she knew I saw auras and energy. So I spoke to Edith, and Edith sent me to Brew Joy. She said, "There's a guy doing with his hands what you're seeing, and he works with energy. So I think you should call him. His name is Brew Joy. He does workshops. He doesn't let very many people in, but call him and see what you can do. He may let you in." So I went directly to the phone, called him. He picked up the phone. I said, "I'm in Jungian training. Edith told me to call. I want to come to your workshop." Now, mind you, it was a month-long workshop. You were at his ranch for 3 weeks. Then you took a week off, and then you went back for a weekend. I had 2 young kids, a practice that I was seeing 30 to 40 clients a week. And I was self-employed. And on the phone, I said, "When is it?" He said, "November." This was August. I said, "I'll be there. Sign me up." I think it was expensive too. And Marvin also went to one of Brew Joy's retreats. So what was it? It was, I cried. June introduced me to Edith, sign 2. Brew Joy picks up his phone and puts me in his workshop. 3 signs, you have to do this. I wasn't intending to move at that point, but when I went to the workshop, it was out in Apple Valley, very rustic. We didn't have phones. We didn't have internet. I was sending my kids postcards every day. And
This cat wants up here. Oh, there it is.
yeah, so it was a very intensive, every single day energy work with music and sound and meditation and a vegetarian diet. Very, very bad for me, vegetarian diet. I ended up with a kidney stone on the week I had off. I went from Los Angeles to San Francisco to visit a friend, ended up in the hospital with a kidney stone the first night, and all I experienced was love. They gave me so much morphine that it would have knocked out a truck driver, and it didn't touch me. They couldn't understand it. And I passed it, of course, and went back to the ranch and finished and started doing energy healing work and decided that I needed to work in consciousness despite my license. And so that's when I started groups. And I modeled them after the groups with Brew. And I went back and forth that year between Los Angeles and Chicago many times to promote my book, to stay at the ranch, to experience the energy. Because everything I had in Chicago, I had to create. It was not my place. And I always knew, even as a 6-year-old child, I said, I want to live in Los Angeles when I grow up. And it was in my diary when I was 6. So, and I started journaling when I was 6. And I've journaled for the most part my whole life, every day, something. But the point of it is that you get more than one message, and they get louder and louder and louder. And when you listen to the synchronicities and when you listen to the whisper, your life flows. When you don't, it doesn't. And that's what the Tree of Life is telling us. Now, the paths that come after, now the world card is interesting because you have the person, you have the eagle. So the person is Aquarius. The eagle is Scorpio, water. So you have the 4 elements for the 4 worlds delineated. And the lion is fire, Leo, fire. We even say Leo the lion. Marvin has a Leo ascendant. And there are times he actually, when he sneezes, it's like a roar.
Me too. My wife, it drives my wife crazy.
Yeah.
Startling.
It drives Matt crazy.
And I can't not do it.
I know, Marvin can't either. It's really funny. You don't have a Leo. Do you have a Leo ascendant?
I am Aquarius, Scorpio rising. I don't know the rest.
So your Scorpio and my Scorpio are connected. The last card is the ox or the bull, and it's facing away from the circle. It's facing away from the spiritual self, just like the root. So it's telling us that we work together in all the worlds in order to manifest and master the physical realm. But we have to come together inside. If we don't take the message that the physical world gives us spiritually and in the mentally, spiritually, and physically, then we can't be in the transformative energy within ourselves. And that's really the message of the foundation to the root. And in the body map, I have no idea what time it is. It's 3 o'clock?
5 to 3.
Okay.
So you have an appointment at 4, right?
Right.
Yep, I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay. So in the transformative energy, we are being told that in order to manifest, we really need to go through spirit. If you look at the 4 different matrices in the noble energy maps, what you'll see is that there's a 64 gate matrix. That's the mental world. We always have activation in the mental world. You wouldn't be alive if any of the channels were not functioning. So defined or not defined, defined is a predisposition. It doesn't compel you. It doesn't force you. It says, consider this.
Yeah.
Consider it. So that's the mental world. Now, the emotional world is tied to the physical body and to the mental world. So it's really a world of feelings. In my axis of awareness, it's body, it's feeling instinct mind. In other words, the precipitating activator of what your gut is telling you is emotional. It's a physiologic emotional response. You're hungry, you're thirsty, you're annoyed, you're irritated. And what does that mean? Something's not going the way you want it to go, or something is physically irritating. If I were wearing socks, I wouldn't be able to really stand it. I hate things on my feet. So whenever possible, I'm barefoot. In fact, one of the photos on my Noble Energy Map page is me standing downstairs in the front of the doors of my sitting room or my office, barefoot in a dress, because I never wear shoes in the house. And when possible, I wear sandals or something that are minimal. But in any case, the emotional angelic world, as I call it, is the emotional world. And it's the world where you have to transform what's in your body and feel yourself in order to know you're not emotional. If you're ruffled, you're not in yourself. You're not spiritual. If you're loving and kind and listening to the other, you're spiritual. Compassion. And the spiritual world is the only of the worlds that goes between the sacral center and the root in the spiritual world in the human design chart. It's a portal. It's a bridge. The other 2 worlds are in the emotional angelic world, meaning they're of the body. But the spiritual world is not of the body. It's not even in the physical body graph. So what Ra did was he took the mental world and he used the mental world because that's all he had. He was given the information that when we sleep, we move into the spiritual world. But he didn't delineate the matrices, and he didn't get that information. So when I got the information, and I did clear that there was another matrix with him, and he confirmed it, that the voice told him there was a matrix. I think there was information that he wasn't conscious of. But when Ra got the information, type didn't exist. The channels didn't exist as circuits. He had no real medical information, just hypotheses. Much of the medical information he gave Marvin was absolutely wrong. One of the things he said the voice told him was that we die. The trigger to death was when serotonin ran out in the body. That's not true. That's medically false.
That's good to know, because I think I've heard that before. And yeah.
Through the human design community?
No, I don't know. I just know it was on my radar a couple of months ago, and it got me worried about how much serotonin I had. Set me on a whole goose chase.
Our body can live way more than we've been led to believe.
That I believe. I agree.
And the key is movement and spirituality and changing your number. When Marvin and I turned 60, he said, maybe we should think about retiring. And I looked at him, I said, Marvin, you're crazy. I'm never retiring. When people stop dreaming, when people stop achieving, when people stop
they die.
Aspiring and manifesting, they die.
Yeah.
So we're never going to stop. And I'm doing more now. Well, I can't say I'm doing more. I'm doing as much now as I did when I was 20.
You're pretty active. I'm having trouble keeping up with you here. So, and I've got lots of gas. So, yeah, a couple of things you said there, because I've said this to friends before. Yeah, I see people retire, and it's almost they just start doing, if they're doing crosswords, or at least keeping their minds open. But they don't. Many people don't do that. In Canada, there was Mr. Dressup, and I grew up with Mr. Dressup. He was like Mr. Rogers. In fact, those two were friends, but like Mr. Dressup was the Canadian version of that. And both of those fellas, I think, died within a year and a half of retiring. Right? That was their spirit. They were lovely people they like really believed in what they were doing.
Right.
And when they stopped, they were gone. And so I always took that as like, I'm not going to retire.
My professor, Bill Henry at University of Chicago, did a study. He spent a whole quarter talking about the study. It was a fascinating study. He was a very boring lecturer. But at the end of the quarter, maybe there were two of us sitting in the class. I never cut a class in all of my schooling because I needed to get the information and take notes. So what he did, he studied Academy Award winning, top level or nominated actors and actresses. And he was interested in the stage in development called identity versus identity diffusion, which occurs between the age of, let's say, 16 and 19, give or take, generally seen between 18 and 20 when kids are in college. And that's when the initiation task from a psychological developmental perspective is trying out different roles. Who are you really going to be in the world? Who best represents who you know yourself to be? And we're not really encouraged. Many of us are not encouraged as children to know who we are. I think I was blessed because whenever I would ask my parents a question about what I should do, they would say, we trust your judgment. You do what you think is right. And I remember once asking my father if he was upset with me, and he said, I could never be angry at you. So there was a lot of unconditional support that I got from both my parents for my soul, and especially from one of my sisters for my soul. But many children growing up have none. They're told to comply. They're being put now in nurseries or daycares where they have to be one of a collective and their individuality is being diverted. I can't imagine ever being at a job from 9 to 5. I've never worked one. So I don't know what that is, but I've never worked one because I've always done what I loved and loved what I did, and could do it endlessly without getting tired. So when we look at the human design body graph and we look at the design of the sacral center to the root center, there is a reason there is only the spiritual connecting us to the mental world, and the physical world, and not to the physical world. It's in two worlds, not more than that. And the emotional angelic world is in 3 worlds. So if you go to my Beyond Human Design book, or when we release the premium report through nobleenergymaps.com, you'll be able to see the worlds, and you'll be able to see that there are some areas of the body graph that have 3 worlds or 4 worlds. Like the channel between the sacral center and the self center, the 515. That is a channel in all worlds. So there are areas within our spiritual consciousness that we get connected up to the cosmos. There is not any mental world. There is not any physical world that has all the worlds in it. But we live in all 4 worlds all the time. Yeah. So just because it's not in a matrix doesn't mean we don't experience it physically. We're in a physical, biological body, but we're energy, electromagnetic, biological beings. So what the task in the Tree of Life is telling us is we have to get to the point where we experience our light body, and that body has priority over our physical manifesting body in the world, because we have choice. So we choose what we do with our physical body. You know that because you said for years you abused your physical body.
Brutally. Like, I think I'm lucky to be alive. I didn't take risks like jumping out of planes and stuff.
Oh, like Cindy did?
Oh, did she do that?
Cindy was a skydiver.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, actually, I wanted to once. My wife said once the kids grew up, I could do that. But, she didn't want to lose her partner while they were young. So I'm technically have the all clear now. But it's not really something I want to do. But, yeah, I didn't take care of my body at all. I ate the wrong things. And lately it's a third of my day is just doing all the things that everyone told me I was supposed to do. Those are those hints too, by the way. Like everyone was just telling me all the time, you should, do this, do that. And I heard it. I knew what I need to do. And I don't know if I didn't feel I was worth doing those things or what it was, but it's even now, it's still like, if I were to be like, oh, I should go for a run, I will resist that I will find an excuse not to do it.
Okay, but that is telling a big story, Sean. Because you were told to do so many things that you didn't want to do. Now, even when your spirit tells you to do it, you resist it.
Yeah.
So that's a POC-POD moment.
Yeah, even the word should, whenever I hear the word should, it's like a wall goes up. Like,
right.
You should do this. It's like, nope.
But spirit will never say should. Spirit will drive you like I'm driven to swim, but it doesn't tell me I should. Because it's not the internal spiritual voice will never impose itself on you unless you give it permission. That's the contract for incarnating.
Earlier, you were talking about how you hear the voice. So, what is that voice? Does it say you may want to consider swimming? Or is it just a knowing of
It's knowing.
time
It's
to
knowing.
swim?
It's starting in 1972, I'd say, or maybe 71. I started having dreams that I would label knowing with a K. And I would say, I know with a K. Like I know because I know because I know. I didn't know how else to express it. That there were certain things that were beyond my mind that I knew. For example, one of my classmates when I was at University of Chicago, and I remember it so clearly, I was a research associate, he was a research associate. We were across from each other on our desks, and he was talking about taking LSD. And he said to me, "What do you think?" And he was starting to use marijuana. And I looked at him and I said, his name was Rick. Rick, I really love my consciousness. It serves me well. Why would I mess with it and take a risk to it? Mm-hmm. So I don't think I'm ever going to use drugs. Mm-hmm. And I didn't.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I remember when I went away for that weekend, it took me 1.5 years to build up the courage because I was afraid my brain would be scrambled. Mm-hmm. And I had that conversation with 3 other people that went before me. Like I had to fact find. Mm-hmm. And one of them, his name is Liam. He's a 6'8" former Olympic rugby player. Big dude.
So he's an alien.
Yeah, he's pretty alien.
No. Those are aliens.
Okay.
They're here in a physical form, but they're not from here.
Yeah.
They're the hybrids.
Yeah, well, and I guess my point is, when I talked to him about that, like, this is the strongest man I knew. And he talked about the fear of, like, going into this medicine and what it would do to his brain. And so it was like, oh, okay, if that guy can do it, and, he, I'm not 6 foot.
But there are people who it does damage.
Sure.
I had a client who marijuana in college damaged irreparably. Mm-hmm. I've had a few clients who did get scrambled. Actually, my piano teacher was an early user of LSD with Timothy Leary. Mm. And his brain got so out of whack, he couldn't never sleep again. Mm. And it tortured him. Mm. To the point that at one point I found him with an overdose and I saved his life. And then I asked him if I did him a favor or not. And he said, "You did. I didn't mean to take so many Ambien, but I just couldn't get to sleep." But it was the LSD that did it to him. So people do need to be cautious and always under good supervision.
Well, 100%. Like, was it setting and intention, mindset? Like, all those things are really important. Having a trip sitter, having someone experienced. Yeah, like I don't take these medicines for recreation. Mm-hmm. I use it for growth. Do you think design would show who could safely take it, or it's no. a state of mind they're in, or
no, I don't know what it would be. I think it's extremely complex. Mm-hmm. I don't think we know. I know teenagers shouldn't use marijuana. That's been proven.
There's so many things that shouldn't happen before you're 21, right?
That's
like getting your eyes lasered. I'm thinking when people are getting their biology changed, like at least wait till you're 22 or 25, right? Or if doing it at all. It's sometimes.
No, it's criminal. But in any case, to get back to the design stuff.
That's a whole rabbit hole, yeah.
By going through the tree of life, and you know, I didn't get into it to associate it with design. I just, as I was studying it, because I knew design, I was thinking about it. But really, I did the calculations because there was a missing matrix. You know, we didn't have the sleep matrix of an animal.
Mhm.
And I know that my animals dream, and I know that they sleep, and I know that there's not a living being on the planet that doesn't take time to rest.
Mhm.
And we have different cycles of rest, but we all need deep sleep. And so I needed to find that calculation, and the calculation just validated the tree of life.
Mhm.
It validated that design, when expanded into its true nature of four worlds, is a model of the process of self-actualization, at least in the first 3 months of life. So it's giving us a picture of how an individual energetically perceives, whether or not they pick up energy and are empaths, that's the most important, whether they have the central column and know what they know when they know it, or do they not? And is there some other way they need to know? And it's always about empowerment. It's about reading the chart like you'd read a thumbprint, unique.
Mhm.
No two people are the same.
No.
No two charts are the same. No two readings are the same. There is no formula. What I can teach people, and do teach people, is how to read the flow of energy between the worlds. And as I'm going back into the Tree of Life to teach my classes, realizing that there's a lot more I can say about that flow that will be unpacking as students begin to work with it and recognize what their voice is telling them they know about the design. And that's in the practitioner class, I'm going to teach people how to read. But in the Four Worlds class, they're only going to use it for themselves.
Mhm.
But not with somebody telling them what it says, seeing what it says for themselves, about themselves.
Mhm.
It's an instrument of self-exploration, and I think it's far more usable than the Enneagram, which is a 9
Yeah, I guess it
point
is. Yeah.
system.
Mhm.
It's more important than the Enneagram, which is so complex and hard to really master. It's more complex than just one mental world design that teaches people how to live in the world and play the game, but die inside. The medical community in the physical world has left out spirit, which is why Marvin left his practice in 1978 and moved to India. And then when he came back, I refused to let him have an office. He rented an office in a dermatology space, and when he initially reopened his practice, because he didn't think people would want to come to the house.
Hmm.
And so the first time he saw them at the office. But everybody was happy to come to our house. He worked in the pool house. They sat around the pool in lounge chairs or under the overhang.
Mhm.
For many years, we had ducks in our pool. They came every year and laid 30. And it was, we called them Bessie and Wilson. And they frequented the pool from probably for about 10 years. And the first duck was Gracie. And she would go sit on people's lap. And if Marvin was with a female patient, she would go in and scold him. He was hers. And I actually have a picture of myself with Gracie on my lap. I should post it. But then once we got the dogs, it was too much for the dogs to have ducks. So after a year, we got rid of the ducks and turned the yard over to the dogs. And then we had play groups in our yard 4 times a week. So the boys would be happy. And Mac and Sam both had a girlfriend. Same girlfriend.
Share the girlfriend.
They did. Okay. They did. Yeah. Her name was Maya. She was
this is in California, though, right?
Yeah, California. Pacific Palisades. We moved in April of 1923 because...
1923?
I mean...
What past life was that?
Right. Yeah, it was a past life, probably. Could have been a Second World War one. Anyhow, the 2021. And we moved because it got very unsafe. Dogs were being stolen when you were walking them. Packages were being stolen off our front door. And we had lived up a hillside. So you had to walk up steps to get to our front door.
Yeah, high intention.
And there was the 2 weeks before we moved, we'd already sold our house. There was a homeless person across the street. We lived right across the street from the Riviera Country Club. So it was celebrities lived across, Michael Keaton lived across the street. Lived across the street from us. Lots of celebrities on our block.
Interesting. He just changed his name last week.
Too.
It's like Michael Douglas Keaton, because I think at the time.
Oh yeah, that's his name.
Right. Yeah, because he was always Michael Douglas, but the Actors Guild, you can't have 2 people with the same name or something.
So he made Michael Keaton. Yeah, I know. When his house was in the name, the title was in the name of Michael Douglas.
He's always been one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, Marvin saw him once as a patient.
Know him of, so.
He was a patient of Marvin's at one point.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thinking about time, because you've got a 4 o'clock. I have 2 questions for you about the house.
About my house?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one is, on the outside of the house, you have mirrors and hexagons. I was asking Marvin, he said to ask you for more detail, but basically you're reflecting energy away.
Yes, it's feng shui.
Is there anything, is the hexagon mean anything, or is that was just the shape of it?
When we had our house in Napoli, in Pacific Palisades, it was on a hillside, and at the bottom of the hill was a white fence and a garden. And there was a cat across the street. There were 2 cats across the street. One cat, one of our cats loved, but the other cat drove him crazy. So I had a feng shui person come to the house, and he said, put an 8-sided mirror facing away from your house on the white fence, and it will keep the cat away. Anytime you want to keep energy away from your house, an 8-sided mirror will reflect the energy back to its source.
Doesn't really matter the size, it's the intention.
No, not the size. So within a couple of weeks, the cat stopped coming. Never came back again. So at Napoli, we had mirrors on every side of our house. And when we renovated this house, before we moved in, I went to Amazon and found the 8-sided mirrors and glue and put them, I think I have 2 on every side. And we enclosed an area with a turf for the dogs and my pool. So there are 2 on every side of that, not on the far end, I think I put 1, and then 2 on that side and every side of the house.
So pretty much in every major direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So the other question is, I noticed, and it seems to be only in 45-degree angles, but there's these little crystals hanging. but it never seems to be on a full.
No, anything, any place in the house that is not a square has a crystal with a red cord.
So the red cord matters too.
Yes,
Okay.
and in our bedroom, which has a vaulted ceiling, I have it on every angle. And in our bathroom, it's also a vaulted ceiling. I have it on any of the angles.
What is it like? Because it's inside the house. Is it about?
It's
keeping
about
energy
it's
in?
about the feng shui of the angle.
Hmm.
That you want the angles to be squared. You want the flow to be smooth. You want it to flow in the natural shapes of the universe. David Wilcock has done some pretty interesting videos of late. He's doing one again Sunday, even though he's on vacation, because he believes that disclosure is going to happen before November. I will check with my UFO guy about his intel. But I have a client who I've seen probably for 7 or 8 years now, and we don't do sessions. He just gives me intel.
Who's your UFO guy? Is that Dr. Stephen Greer?
No,
You
I met
mentioned him
Stephen
before.
Greer. We spent time with him. He was in our home. We invited people to listen to him lecture. We went out on a UFO expedition with him.
Did you? That's awesome.
One of his first, where he was doing with the strobe lights and the CE5. And I obviously had a reaction. And I assume it was extraterrestrial. Shortly after that, I believe. No, it was before that I saw the UFO. And my son had an extraterrestrial in his bedroom, literally. In any case, the feng shui energy needs to flow. And the crystals help it flow. So
cool. Well, we'll probably do this again tomorrow. Do you think? Or
sure,
Sunday?
we can.
Yeah. Well, we can talk more about.
We can do it Sunday too.
UFOs and aliens, because I've got lots of questions.
I don't know that I have lots of answers. Oh, I started to say David Wilcock in I think it was 2 weeks ago, and maybe a couple of weeks before that, he was talking about the crop circles and the formation of the crop circles that had just appeared. And in his books, The Michael Prophecies, he talks about them, but he also researched some scientists, and the proportions of the crop circles are exacting geometrically to the human and to other species and to other galaxies and to other natural occurrences. So the geometry of life is a sacred geometry. And the body graph that I use is sacred geometry. It is the original body graph. When you're looking at the tree of life, you have concentric circles, and there are 3 that are contained within the body map. And those 3 are exactly proportioned. The voice spent 5 days with Ra giving him the right body graph. So it was pretty important not just to have the gates and channels, the meaning of which the voice didn't always give him, but the exact replica of the body graph, because the proportions and the geometry of the body graph validate that it is an esoteric knowledge that relates back and synthesizes with the tree of life. Okay. So, should we stop there?
Yeah, tomorrow I want to come back to LSD and aliens.
I don't know anything about LSD. I've never taken it.
No, I do, and I've got some thoughts on it and on aliens.
I have some microdosing that I sometimes have used.
Oh yeah?
Like one. It's so tiny.
Yeah, it just pretty much makes things brighter. But okay, we'll
I don't notice a difference.
No?
No, I've never noticed a difference.
Cool. All right, we're gonna end with that.
Okay.
I gotta do that click the button thing. And it's there.